thank you everyone for joining the session. So in this lightning talk, we'll quickly cover how our legacy content modeling techniques are actually blocking our AI visibility efforts. So uh, over the past couple of days, we've been hearing quite a bit about AI. And if you're in the space on the marketing side, you're familiar with the importance of AI visibility. There are some techniques that are well-known techniques by now that can help us expose our content to AI engines. So for them to be able to understand our content, reuse our content, cite our websites, help us tell our story through answers. ChatGPT, Perplexity, Anthropic, right? These are the common use cases. ChatGPT is really the one that we want to focus on. However, there's a fundamental issue with how we've been modeling content that's preventing AI from using our content effectively. And if AI does not know how to use our content effectively, it's not going to do that or use it at all. Right? So this is what we're going to talk about. So how to solve that problem. So if we haven't met, my name is Vasiliy. I am a co-founder of Zon Digital, and I've been around the psycho space for a long time. Probably 18 plus years in the industry, specialized across the entire psycho portfolio. I've been a psycho MVP for the past 12 years across commerce, ambassador, technology categories. So it's been a journey with psycho. So psycho is near dear to me. Although it's been the core of my career, I'm specialized across a variety of platforms. And for the past about 3-4 years, I've been heavily involved in artificial intelligence. Everything from specialized models to Gen AI. A couple words for context about Zon Digital. We are an AI agency specialized in Sitecore. That's an important distinction. AI is at the core of what we do. AI is at the core of our operational model. We're intimately familiar with how it works, how specialized machine learning works, how Gen AI works. We use it in our daily operations internally for delivery, for financing, accounting. So we're intimately familiar how it reads content and what it needs to be able to understand content better. So this session is based on our direct personal experience, not theory. So this is the reality right now. AI is the biggest consumer of our content these days. It's no longer humans who are consuming our content, but the problem is we've been creating content models for human consumption this whole time, right? So what does that mean? We have standard articles that have title, let's say hero, image, summary, and body. We're used to standard article layout. That's what we expect as humans. We define the what to show, and then we use the presentation layer to provide additional context around that content for readers, right? So if we use that a pure model, well, if we look at a model, at a content model, we might have an article that has some related articles with it. The model itself doesn't explain the relationship. It just shows the relationship. And then we use our websites and channels, the presentation layer, to help provide the context around that. So when users see related articles or related products like Amazon, for instance, customers who bought this, bought that, right? So we're trying to explain the relationship visually. And then we're also relying on human interpretation and human experience to draw other conclusions from that presentation and from that content. So as humans, we're able to discern and synthesize the content and understand, okay, is this really something that I should continue reading because it's related, or is it related for some other reason and I'm not really interested in that. So as humans, we can make those decisions very well. AI can do that to a point, generative AI. It can still do logical inference. It can still understand certain things, but it can only understand it down to a generic level. So what ends up happening is when it looks at content, same type of content on 2 different websites, it scores them generically and it has a hard time figuring out which one's better. And it tries to go after relevance and scoring based on Google's indexing and other levers that it can pull to understand the content that it should actually be using more, right? So AI needs to understand more about the relationships. AI needs to understand more about the content, the contextual relationships, the context around the target audiences, the purpose of the article, right? The intent of the article. So when AI reads the article, it starts, think about AI engines as someone, as a teenager with a PhD level knowledge. That's a good analogy, right? So you can get distracted very easily, but it's very smart. So if you tell it, if you point it in the right direction, if you give it specifics, it'll do an amazing job. But that's the trick, is we have to give it specifics. We have to explicitly point AI in the right direction so it doesn't have to rely on its own inference and other levers. And the more we help it, the more we help AI understand when and how to use our content, the more it'll use it, the more it'll cite us in answers. All right, so that's the important point. So how do we do that? Well, first we got to understand the questions that AI tries to answer when it analyzes the content. Let's say if we have a content relationship. What's the nature of the relationship? Why are they related? Is it the same topic, same author? Are they related to the same industry, service, product? What's the intent of the article? Is this a thought leadership article or is this a research paper? And is this a transactional piece of content? Is this a content that I should use to answer a question when someone's using to buy or take an action? Or is this something that I should be using when someone's trying to research a topic? Right? These are all the contextual challenges that AI runs into, and it tries to do its best. And it does a pretty good job, but again, up to a level. But to differentiate further, to stand out of the noise in the crowd, this is where we have to take that extra step. So we have to give it extra context. So we recommend rolling out at least 3 layers of contextual awareness. One is the target layer, telling AI where to use that information. Industry, for instance, what industry to use it in. Once AI identifies the person that's asking the question and profiles the person, the service, the type of person that's asking the question, right? Product, offering. And in fact, a lot of the target layer is already being done now. So if you're already doing these types of tags, you're already partway there, right? So that's good. So once we roll that out, that's the basic step. Once we roll that out, we usually recommend moving to the intent layer, right? Add additional context around the goal of the article. So this is where we're trying to answer or help AI decide when to use this content, right? So when a user interacts with AI, AI profiles the user and tries to understand user intent, and it tries to give it the right information. So AI engines have a profile running on the user, right? So if we can tell AI engines when to use that content, they'll pull it in. So intent layer can help us identify information as informational, right? So if user is doing a research, if user is trying to buy or take an action, transactional, right? If user is trying to research a topic, again, thought leadership, or if this is an important piece that highlights threats and tries to warn users, right? That's the risk advisory and compliance, right? So, and this is a limited set of tags. These are examples, right? Your taxonomy can look significantly different, right? And then finally, the relationship layer. This is the layer that helps AI understand the relationship between various types of content, the nature of the relationship. It helps AI answer the question of what to actually show to the user, right? So if a user is consuming, or if it's asking about a certain topic, AI, this taxonomy helps AI understand what other information it can pull in to give a more accurate, precise, and complete answer, right? The goal of AI, remember that the goal of AI engines like ChatGPT is to give the precise answer. Their goal is also to keep you hooked, but that's a different question. But they do that with follow-up questions. But if they don't give you a precise answer, you'll switch to a different service, right? And they don't want that. So this is where we try to answer questions, whether it's a related topic, whether it's a related theme, audience? Is it a series of articles that are all related? Are these two pieces of content sequential? Should I use content from this article first versus the other one, right? Or is one article supporting the other article as a supporting evidence? So these are all the important contextual answers that we can give AI. So how do we do this in PsychroAI? Right? Well, Psychro allows us to do tagging, and PsychroAI has an automated way to do that. We can either do that for simple things. Once we get more sophisticated, we would want to create our own models that are trained on our marketing strategy, on our GTM, understands the business rules, it has contextual awareness of business goals and objectives to help us do the tagging automatically. So what's changing is, instead of creating direct relationships in PsychroAI as a content author, let's say you're on an article, selecting related articles directly, what we're going to now introduce is a relationship context entity, or template, in other words, in PsychroAI, that's going to host the relational context on it. So here on the screenshot, you can see relational context is where we select the type of context for this relationship. Then we select the article that this specific piece is related to. And then what we're also doing is giving it a relationship score. This score also helps AI identify the closeness of the relationship, the strength of the relationship, right? So giving it a little more context. So that's a big change. So instead of selecting a related article directly, we're going to select a relationship. And on that relationship, we're going to set the strength, we're going to set the type of relationship, contextual information, and then finally, the piece that is related, right? We obviously don't want to do that manually. This is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So this will, especially if your website is scaled, this is a lot of manual overhead. So we either want to use the agentic tagging in PsychroAI, or if you want to get more advanced, sophisticated, right now you want to create your own model, right? And that's outside the scope of this speech. But if you're curious about how to do that, come talk to me after the session. I don't think they allow Q&As here. But the point is, we want to automate that process. So speak to your vendor about or IT about automating that process, because manually it's just going to be too overwhelming. Once we automate the process, we want to make sure we continuously test the process, because there's just no way we're going to manually be able to validate all that. We can sample and see how AI is doing. There's just no way we're going to be able to check thousands of articles, especially go back in history and check everything if you're sitting on a large library of content, right? So for instance, we have a prospect right now with 14,000 PDFs. There's no way they're going to be able to check any of that. So once we've automated that, now we have a way to enrich. So now we've enriched our content with additional context, right? So how do we expose that to AI? Well, we do that through the standard levers that we already know about: schema.org, AI APIs, and Q&A pairs, right? So in schema.org, we can add additional attributes. For instance, about thing, we can list tags there. We can also add a relationship attribute, add contextual information about that relationship in that schema. And then everything else can go into the keywords on top of that schema doesn't support. So this helps provide now contextual awareness about the article. Now AI is aware of what the goal of the article is, when to use it, how to use it. Is it even safe to use it? Is this a public piece of content, or is this an accidentally leaked out private information, right? So all that contextual information now is given to AI, and now it will be able to expose your content more frequently. So as a result, what you can expect is if you implement this strategy, about 30 to 60% increase in discoverability through services like ChatGPT, and also about 20 to 40% jump in user engagement because we're now targeting users more precisely. Your content is being cited more precisely by AI engines. So as a result, they're now more engaged with your content because it's more accurately positioned. And on that note, thank you very much for your time.